Let's kick this off as usual with explaining parsing rules first. Basically, everything counts including all type of ads, only the downtime is removed during phase transitions. So don't pop any major cooldowns in between phases if there are some leftover bots that need to be cleared. And same thing as I already mentioned in previous guides, in order to achieve the 99 parse, you have to kill Mimiron on hard mode. If you are trying to parse doing normal mode, you will never get the 99 unfortunately, as all hard modes rank higher than lower difficulties. As you can see from the logs, the best I could do on normal mode was only 95, and those were the very first few weeks of Ulduar release, so not many parses on hard mode existed back then. Now on normal mode, you will definitely get even lower rank, even if you pump hard just because more and more people are killing Mimiron on hard mode. So the pull begins with pushing the red button, and then there's a little bit of downtime. Common strategy is to wait near the button area for the first fire to spawn before moving out and engaging with the boss. The pre-pot here is tricky if you want to use Potion of Wild Magic as pre-pot. If you use it before the fire spawns, it will wear off, or at least majority of the duration will wear off before you actually engage Mimiron because of the roleplay. You can actually pre-pot after the fire will spawn if you don't get hit by it, as you still won't be in combat. However, if you do get hit by the fire, you are immediately in combat and pre-pot is ruined. That's why we are going often with the fire resistant potion as pre-pot prior to pushing the button, as the effect lasts for 2 minutes and helps our healers for more smoother kills. The first and most important thing I want to talk about, that is actually true for most encounters, but can be very nicely applied for this phase, is combination of planning ahead and treating movement as your additional resource. You can see what I mean and look at how the phase 1 should look like from a Boomie perspective, while I'll explain what do I mean by treating movement as a resource. I'm also not saying I'm executing it pitchy perfect, but you should have a basic idea what to do. So as a DPS, you want to always be casting, even if you are moving. The pool is an example. I'm running ahead of the boss on the pool while casting all of our instants, being Fairy Fire, Trance, Starfall, Insect Swarm and Moonfire. So I have 5 global cooldowns that should get me to my designated position before I start blasting with Eclipse Rotation. Don't forget to mouse over the boss if you are using Serenite Bomb and Starfall mouse over macro as I am. Also, if I get the lucky early 4-piece tier 8 instant Starfire proc, I'm delaying this first one and waiting for the first lunar eclipse, because popping it right away will not only not benefit from lunar eclipse extra damage, but most importantly can accidentally proc your solar eclipse instead of lunar as the first one, and we don't want that. So reaching first lunar eclipse is where you wanna spend the proc and popping hyperspeed accelerators and unused trinkets. And why do I want to be ahead of the boss? So I never find myself in a melee range and I shouldn't ever worry about proximity mines or shock blast as well as keeping distance from the fire. So when I know the boss is being kited clockwise and I wanna be ahead, my movement shouldn't end only on pull. This is why if you treat your movement as a resource and when you cast your instant spells, you should spend that global cooldown on moving slowly towards the position that you want to be in near future and not just standing still. If this is executed properly, it comes at almost no DPS loss. Actually, standing still is a DPS loss, because you will have to move to that position either way, but even with greater distance. Prime example is refreshing the dots or instant Starfire proc from the 4-piece tier 8. I will cast Insect Swarm either way, so why not spending that global cooldown on slight stutter step movement to keep my distance from the boss, as I know he will be moving towards me. This is DPS gain actually, not a DPS loss. This way I can keep blasting from distance, and I just avoided situation where I stood still on all these instants, and suddenly I'm in melee range of the boss, he's casting Shock Blast, and I have to start moving else I'm dead. But my lunar eclipse just procced, and not only the duration is being wasted, also instead of casting Starfire, I'm spending my global cooldowns on moving away and clipping my dots. So standing still was a DPS loss. You should be expecting movement and planning ahead, not reacting to things, that's already too late. Let's mention a few abilities to pay attention to in phase 1 that can hinder your 99 parse. First and straightforward, fire. Fire is bad, don't stand in fire, no 99 if dead, you get it. Not really much to say here, except the fire is spreading to the closest person, and you will have to deal with it throughout the whole encounter, so I'm not gonna mention it again. The other ability is Napalm Shell. Does damage and leaves a dot, can't be avoided, have to be healed through. Don't get hit from anything else, or otherwise this could kill you if you are not at full HP. Also stay away 5 yards from other people to avoid multiple targets getting hit. Once in a while, he will start casting Shock Blast that will kill anyone in 15 yards of the boss, so pay attention to your deadly boss mods, Big Whiz, Focus Target, Weak Aura or any other method you are tracking this ability and its cast time. Every few seconds, Mimiron will also launch proximity mines 15 yards around it in a loose circle, and they explode if you step within 3 yards of them. So long story short, don't ever be in melee or close range of the boss to avoid both mines and Shock Blast. Luckily, there's a bit of downtime in between the phases, which is great not only for getting our mana back, so don't cast anything at this point, but also for our cooldowns to come back up again, and Eclipse and Trinket timers to reset, so we can start phase 2 with Starfall and Juicy Lunar. Common strategy is to pop Heroism in this phase, so if that's the case for you as well, after casting Fairy Fire, Starfall and Dots, proceed with the Eclipse rotation and pop all cooldowns such as on-use trinkets, hyperspeed accelerators and potion of speed on your first lunar eclipse coupled with heroism. Just make sure when you are about to get into that lunar eclipse, you aren't standing anywhere near fire, or frost bomb, or laser barrage will be casting in few seconds, to avoid any unnecessary movement during the juicy lunar, as you really want to spend all global cooldowns on Starfire casts. Also, if you have casted trends in phase 1 on pull, they should come back up again mid-fight this phase too. Just make sure there is no fire in melee range, and especially behind the boss as trends to attack it from behind. If there is fire, don't cast it immediately and delay until it's safe to cast them, otherwise they will die to the fire, and around 40k damage in a single global cooldown was wasted. Other than that, it's just single target nuke with paying attention to few abilities and heavy raid damage happening. I'm just going to mention those that are important for casters, as they can ruin your parse or kill you. First one, Rocket Strike. This is just casting on random raid member, additional mechanic that forces you to move, just move out of a small circle on the ground. Throw an instant cast on the move. Once in a while, he will begin casting Laser Barrage, and then he's gonna start spinning around, shooting lasers or rockets or whatever, killing everyone caught in the fire. He is spinning clockwise every single time, so if he's aiming at you, you should just take few steps and move to his right, and start casting freely without worrying he will ever catch you, instead of running around semi-full circle to his left in the direction he is spinning. If he is not aiming at you and it's gonna be difficult to make it in time to his right side, then just rocket boots away to other side while throwing instant casts on the move, like refreshing dots or 4-piece Tirade Starfire proc. Last thing that can kill you here is Frost Bomb. Keep an eye for a blue, frosty ball, and keep away from it as it will definitely kill you when exploding with a decently large radius. In phase 3, one of the ranged DPS needs to tank and kite Mimiron's head here, and I actually like being the one to do it for multiple reasons. A. I was usually pulling thread and ended up tanking anyway. B. If I'm staying ahead of the raid, trying to get the head out of the fire so we can be brought down, I'm also minimizing my chances of being silenced or getting killed by assault bot or bomb bot at the same time. C. It's easier to stay out of the fire. D. You are the one deciding when and how to move, so you can time it with movement as a resource explained in phase 1, for example refreshing the dots, Starfall, Trance, Innervate or 4-piece Tirade proc, and can stand still for your lunars not worrying the head will be pulled out of range when you just wanna blast for a few seconds. And probably most important, E. The consistent damage from the head helps your Ulk and Frenzy procs if you are spec'd for it. Other than that, this phase is good option for Starfall with multiple targets and all count towards Parses. So don't delay it unless it can be timed with trinket procs if the internal cooldown is about to reset. Make sure you are popping all major cooldowns when the head is brought down to the ground, and try to minimize movement as it's taking extra damage at this time, so you wanna squeeze the most out of it with single target nuke. Make sure to keep away from bomb bot and assault bot and always be casting, so throwing instants while on the move like multi-dotting the bots for example, and there's a lot of movement happening here. The last phase is just combining everything together. Everything from previous phases still applies, so I'm not gonna mention it again. Probably the most chaotic and movement intensive, so again make sure you are throwing instants every time you are moving, multi-dotting the different body parts. I prefer using insect swarm on the move if it's not already applied on the target, as not only it helps with our 4-piece T-rate procs, which again helps us to sustain DPS on movement, but also it's less mana intensive, and you don't have to face the target in order to cast insect swarm. You can be turned even backwards compared to Moonfire, which you have to face the target in order to cast it. I've also found a clickable weak auras that I'm testing, for example, where you can just easily target and multi-dose different body parts on the move without even looking, which helps a lot in this phase. Starfall is the best spell you can cast here, as it will not only hit 3 targets constantly, but the targets are close to each other, so the stars will also do splash damage to other targets as well. So make sure you are in range for it, especially if you are using Glyph of Focus. And also learn from my mistakes. If your trends come back up again, cast them after the Leviathan phase 1 boss casted Shock Blast, otherwise the trends will die to it, and that would be a waste and a DPS loss. Regarding the glyphs, I'm usually running Insect Swarm, Starfall and Starfire, and Mimiron is no exception as this trio can dish out the most DPS here. The only viable alternative to Starfire is Glyph of Focus, but again, the range is crucial factor here, with all the fires, so I don't really recommend it. I'm also using my default single target spec here that was already showcased in previous guides such as XT, Razor Scale or Ignis. One can argue to use Typhoon here, and yes, it can be viable and useful especially in phase 3 with multiple bots running around. However, since I'm always ahead of the pack and tanking ahead, not really using it anyway. And I also wouldn't trade Oaken Frenzy for Typhoon here. I think it's very underestimated for PvE. I would 100% always pick Oaken Frenzy over Typhoon on Mimiron. There's a lot of damage going on that can proc it. Looking at my logs, I always have around 3 to 4 procs on average, which is around 8% uptime, and that is the same duration as Heroism for example. Once I even managed to get mad 7 procs, which was more than 12% uptime of having 10% extra damage. That's the same uptime as my Flare of the Heavens Trinket procs, and almost double the duration of Heroism. Also one thing everyone is forgetting about, Oaken Frenzy is actually replenishing your mana as well, so you definitely don't have to take any mana talents, not even Omen of Clarity. I even innervated healers and still didn't have any mana issues. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and if you like the content, I would appreciate if you like the video and subscribe. Thank you and good luck.